Excellent.
I hope
Excellent.
that's a good answer.
That was good. That was good. I mean, it showed it gave more clarity to the difference between the two. Thank you so much, Benny. Thank you. I'm going to throw the next question to Ayobami. Ayobami, from your experience, we want to learn from your experience. And so my question is going to be from your real time, real life experience, what situation have you had that has thrown up the ethical conundrum?
I hope that's a good answer.
That was good. That was good. Uh, Ayobami, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so
Good.
we want to know from your experience, uh, can you share a real-world example of an ethical dilemma you've encountered in the past and how you helped navigate that situation?
So this particular question is going to put me in an ethical dilemma itself, if you get what I mean, because giving you a real life example would just mean I'll be giving you insight into things that are currently happening or that has happened in the organization where I currently work, or in organizations where I've worked. So I'll just give you a scenario, and I will bring out the ethical dilemma, which I know that most compliance experts or professionals would have encountered in the past. So imagine you having a law enforcement agency as your landlord. So you run a business and you have an organization where you've got a compliance program in place where you say no bribery, no corruption, no gift giving. You've literally set the standard on the rule. And your landlord, where you host your business, is a law enforcement agency. And an agent of that agency tries to give your staff a bribe of cash, which is forbidden in your organization, then what you will ordinarily do is to say that, hey, landlord, you've given my staff cash, you've crossed the line. So what you ordinarily do is either terminate your transaction with this landlord and say you're not doing the business again with them and you want to proceed to do another thing entirely. Now, you can't do that. One, that is where your business sits. Two, this is law enforcement agency and this is Nigeria in quotes. That is an ethical dilemma. You don't want to put your business outside in the sun or with no address. You don't want a situation where these folks, given the situation of the country, you don't want them to retaliate against your business. So how do you deal with it? And at the same time, you want to uphold ethical standards of values that your organization has put in place. So that in itself is an ethical dilemma. Your staff has done the right thing by coming to report this situation. For all intents and purposes, your landlord is your vendor. So how do you deal with it? How do you terminate the contract with your landlord or your vendor, who is also a law enforcement agency? And if luck is not going to be on your side, maybe that your landlord is equally your regulator or something, or for some reason something has happened and you just have to deal. So that is some ethical dilemma. If you can look at it from that lens, that I have seen something like that I've seen in the past. There's so many, but I can actually bring this one to four. And now you'll be wondering, how did we deal with this situation? So the first thing we did was to call the landlord to a meeting to actually establish that they indeed, or their agent indeed, gave our employee a gift of cash, which is forbidden by us. They came and we had a meeting with them and we reiterated our position with regards to gift giving. We do not encourage or entertain any form of gift giving that is cash oriented, and we have a gift threshold if you must give, even though we discourage it in its entirety. And another thing we did was to we documented that meeting discussion in the minutes, and it was filed. A copy of which was sent to the agent, and a copy of which was sent to our landlord. Then we went all around the organization to again create more awareness about gift giving and the thin line between giving of gifts and bribing. So we made sure that our employees got to have a deeper understanding of what our position is with regards to gift giving. So that's one ethical dilemma that our business found itself in, which we found a way of navigating it through. We dealt with it both ways in such a way that our landlord then understood our position and they never did that again.
Okay, excellent, excellent. I'll do a very quick follow-up question to that. First, I'd like to probably, if it's okay for you to share, to understand what your gift threshold is, within the context of the environment that we are. Then secondly, there's usually this argument between giving gifts and bribe, what can be constituted as bribe. There's the argument that we conduct business in an environment where people give gifts and appreciate gifts. And within that same environment, we have anti-bribery laws where you do not want to have your people be influenced. How do you balance that? That's one. Then secondly, can you share your threshold?
So first of all, for international organizations, especially organizations that have affiliation with the US or the UK, you need to treat yourself as an international organization and you take yourself away from the local landscape from which in which you play. You are an international organization and you must live your life as an international organization, as a business. Our gift threshold, and in most organizations, is always between $50 and $100. Anything beyond that is always seen as more. I mean, by standard, averagely in most organizations that you see, the gift threshold is always between $50 and $100. I tell anybody who cares to listen, anything that can be given as a gift can be given as a bribe. If it's a gift, it can be a bribe. So you need to watch it and you need to actually ensure that your employees understand that basic norm and rules with regards to gifting and bribing. And you need to let your employees know the implication of going beyond that threshold. And there's certain things that you need to take away in its entirety. So most organizations where I've worked, cash is always forbidden as a gift. No matter what, you have to say a no to have that zero tolerance to cash gifting or any cash equivalent. So you have to say no to that. That's the number one threshold. Then two, you need to let your employees know that if you're currently working on anything that can look like or appear like as an inducement towards a particular project or relationship, then you have to actually stay clear of any form of gift at that particular period. I hope I've been able to answer your...
Excellent. I'm actually, thank you for the threshold. I was thinking along those lines too as well. Although I'm aware that for a lot of banks, I don't know if anybody is in a bank in the comments you can mention. I know the banks still maintain the 10,000. The last I know it was about 10,000 there for banks in Nigeria. But it's good to know that, I mean, there is now consideration for inflation and also economic considerations to catch up with that. Thank you so much, Ayobami. I've been told that Tommy is now back. Tommy, if you're back, please let us know so that you can I can quickly return the chair that I was beginning to enjoy to you. Tommy, are you back on the call? Tommy?
Yes, I'm back.
All righty. So
I apologize. Right.
Over to you.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the break in transmission. So the next question goes to Remy. What are the most common rationalizations employees give when making unethical choices, and how can organizations address them?
So one of the things, obviously, as part of a compliance professional is dealing with investigations, so speak up reports, addressing them. And as part of that, you often have to go to the root cause analysis of, okay, this happened, that happened, what is the reason? And so I'm gonna pull from that in terms of how I answer this question. One of the things that you often hear is, oh, but everyone is doing it, or everyone has done it, right? And I hear this one a lot. And I think that applies in two ways, internally and externally, right? So externally, in terms of the referring to the business landscape and what the competitors are doing. And internally, it may be that, oh, this is something, for example, let's say, pulling a sick leave when you're not really sick, or, taking change and, put in your pocket, right? They might say, oh, well, everyone is doing it, what's the big deal? And I think it's about one thing I always say is acknowledge market practices, right? As a leader, it's about acknowledging that, okay, maybe our competitors do things a certain way that doesn't align with our values, but we don't behave in that way. And I'm going to refer to Michelle Obama here, right? When they go low, we go high, right? So encouraging your staff to know that your values aren't just words, they are the ways you live. And that means that no matter what other people are doing, you don't do that. And I think as well is also, understanding your culture, right? We said there are two things. There's culture and there's climate, right? Culture is the bigger piece of how your company is and how that develops over time. And climate tends to be the day-to-day behaviors that you see. And I have an example, where one case we investigated where this lady joined the company, and she was, she understood what right and wrong was. And, she came in and saw something that was unethical, and she flagged it and said, this isn't right. And she was told to essentially just shut up and, mind your business, basically. And over time, she started doing the misconduct herself. And eventually, a new staff joined and raised this as a speak up, report. And it was investigated, it was confirmed that this was going on. And the staff member, when she was asked, well, why did you do this? She said, well, when I first joined, I flagged it, but everyone is doing it. So therefore I joined them as well, right? So you hear that a lot, and you have to be very mindful of that, of what practices that you allow to fester in your company. Another one is, oh, it's only a small thing. It's not, it's not something big, and I think it's about reframing that for people, staff to know that the small things is what leads to eventually the massive front page misconduct. And if you don't nip that in the bud, they will only get bigger. Another one is, where they, as part of the only small thing, they say, well, nobody's getting hurt by it, and you see that a lot in insider trading crimes, right? Where they say, well, it's just the stock market. I'm not, doing anything wrong. I'm making a bit of money from it. But even if you don't see the victim, there is a victim, right? Somewhere. And even it might just be the company. It might be that that behavior gets your company known in the market as, untrustworthy, unreliable, fraudulent, right? So there's no financial, impact directly on the victim, but it is reputational damage that's happening, right? And that trust in your company, you're losing it by allowing people to do even the small misconduct. Another one is, I'm following orders, right? I'm following the managers. My manager told me to do this, so I did it. And I think, you see that a lot. And I think in Nigeria as well, where people say, well, the leaders or managers said I should do this. And we have to, as leaders, empower staff. I always say, individual accountability leads to collective accountability, right? If everyone is doing the right thing and behaving in the right way, ultimately everyone will be doing the same thing and be on the same page. And I think also training managers for them to allow staff to speak up, allow staff to kind of voice their opinion. It's not that because my boss, knows best. We can all learn from each other, right? And when you cultivate an environment where everyone has a voice, ultimately the people will feel comfortable speaking up and saying, well, you said do this, but I don't feel comfortable, or even escalating it to a more senior leader. And then the last one I think the reason I see is, well, if we don't do this, we're going to lose the business. And that goes back to the first example of everyone is doing it, the external push. If people feel like, they must, do certain things to win business, then ultimately it means that as a leader or as the C-suite, you haven't put the right culture in place in your company. And so I always say, once again, is about giving them examples, right? As leaders, be vulnerable. You know, those dilemmas, less stuff here when you're going through it. It makes them see you as human. And so when they're going through it, they can also say, look, you know, manager, boss, you know, this is what's happening. I feel this way. Let's discuss it. Let's find solutions together. You know, you can definitely win business the right way without doing dodgy things. And also one thing I think is important to do is always give staff that permission and say, look, our focus is doing business the right way. We give you permission to turn down business, right? You know, that is not in compliance or that is not aligned with our values. And by you giving them that comfort, that space, they will then in turn be able to manage that pressure of, I need to win business, but, you know, I'm worried that if I do or follow our policies, I'll lose out to other people. So these are the common, I would say, common dilemmas or push that I see staff given as a reason for engaging in misconduct.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you very much. And that brings me to Akinola. So I'll ask you a question. Akinpelu, how can leaders balance competing priorities, profitability, stakeholder pressure, and ethical standards when making tough decisions?
Thank you very much. I'd like to open by saying that first and foremost, the very essence of leadership is always about balancing priorities, whether ethical or not. You know, most leaders are accountable, whether at CEO level or line managers are accountable, you know, for some level of financial stewardship. You want to satisfy your shareholders, you want to make money, your investors are on your neck. You also have now to balance that with, you know, internal pressure, staff welfare, board issues, and all of those. And now you also have to keep up with ethical standards. What are the moral standards? What do you look like to society, your regulators? And so it's essentially about balancing. And it can be tough. It can be tough. You know, the last speaker spoke about, you know, chasing sales, chasing finances, and trying to, you know, make business, while at the same time you are in a society where others are cutting corners, like you said, everybody's doing it, and you want to make the same numbers. But leaders have to be firm. They need to have that resolve. And I think that while there are no set of specific written rules, but I think a major thing that leaders must do is to always learn to, in a sense, anchor decisions on their core values.
Right.
The organizations need to have clear values, which you must follow. And your action as a leader, it tells what the people below are going to do when you are faced with such decisions. If I can get very, very practical here, there was a time in the industry, I've worked in the banking industry, where you could define some people, just talking to them, bankers, you know, bankers were all over the place from different banks. And you talk to a banker and they could tell you, oh, you're a GT person or you're a PhD person. Just by the way they presented, you know, even the things they were offering you, the rates they were giving you and all of that. And I think those values help organizations, you know, help you as a leader to know this is a line we don't cross in my organization, and I must stick to it, because if I stick to it, those below, those looking up at me would also stick to it. And they go beyond the things we write on our website, you know, all these platitudes, integrity, sustainability. It is actually what you do. Also, I think another thing leaders should also do is to, you know, not essentially a framework, but learn to do like an assessment, like a stakeholder impact mapping analysis. If we take this decision, who is it going to impact the most? And how is it going to impact us? High influence, you know, some sort of, in quotes, heat mapping. There's an high influence, high impact decisions. For instance, if I give a high risk loan in a bank, in a bank which I'm not supposed to give, I'm crossing limits. If my regulators catch me, your license may be gone. High influence, high impact. You want to look at your shareholders. So your shareholders want immediate gain, but you can also transparently communicate to them, know that we may not have this immediate gain, but at least we are preserving, you know, our business license. There's no long-term hurt. Recently, you must have had central bank withdrawing licenses of banks, recently slamming very huge sums of penalties on different companies. So you need to really do that heat mapping to see who it affects. Is it your stakeholders? Is it your board? How it affects them? And that helps you, decide what is ethical. Doesn't necessarily make the decision easier, but at least you have some clarity around that decision. You may be losing a few millions now, but you know that the decisions you are taking are sustainable, not just for now. Your company is not disappearing. Transparent communications helps. You are managing expectations of everybody. And this reminds me something that goes on in the industry where I work. You used to have these odd QPR sessions. I've attended QPR sessions, as an observer, where you are seeing both the manager and the people being managed not telling themselves the truth. Setting targets, high targets that are not realistic, and we can do it, we must do it. Comparing yourself with another bank or another company that has different dynamics, and there has to be transparent communication, managing expectations. Yes, your chairman wants it, your shareholders want it, but it has to be communicated transparently. So look, this is how soon we can reach it. This is how we can get there, because we do not want to crash out. We do not want to burn out. We do not want to be caught doing something unethical that turns, the crowd against us. I think there are a lot of things that can be done, but yes, clear organizational values that guide your decisions, doing that sort of mapping, communicating transparently, and leveraging regulatory safeguards. This is something I've always used. Sometimes when there's a lot of pressure and it's my turn to take a call, I just put it on the table. So CBN says we cannot do this. NCC says we cannot do this. And I leave it on the table for the higher ups to take that decision. And it has always helped. So it's always good to also be knowledgeable and leverage all those tools to ensure that your balancing is very well done, and you have an ethical organization with people below you also taking ethical decisions following your examples. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Amazing. What I hear you say is you need to define and communicate ethical guidelines. You need stakeholder impact assessments, and you need transparent communication, and then also manage your communications. Thank you very, very much. So we'll go now to the next question, goes to Ayobami. So from your perspective, how do issues like corruption, regulatory inconsistency, and political pressure influence ethical decision-making in Nigeria? And this is coming home.
So this is supposed to be all the three things that you've mentioned are supposed to be abnormal situations, and unfortunately the climate where we operate has made those abnormal situations look like something that is normal. And where people normalize unethical behavior and behaviors around corruption, for instance. So we need to give them something at this station or at this office so that your action can actually work. Whatever you're looking for can actually come up on time. Regulatory inconsistencies where you're not even certain about what is going to be coming out from the regulator. If we do this now, we don't know what they're going to say or what they're going to say or what they're going to do. So let's just continue that you won't see any fine clear line with regards to the regulations that are being passed out. It's either regulations should either be gray or black. Now it's blood. You can't even understand where it's coming from. Then the political pressure comes up. You're wondering what policy, because of if you're not wary about this particular member of the legislative arm of government, if you step on his toes, you don't know what's new law that they may pass. You don't know what's new policy that the regulator may issue. We see all this regularly. You see situations where staff will say, we need to give something so that we can get something, or you're wary of releasing any form of product or services because you're not sure about what the regulator is going to say. You're seeing situations whereby you have done a particular thing, your competing business has done your competitor has done that same thing, and you're both slammed with maybe a temporary freeze of business. Then next thing you hear is your competitor has been released. Excuse me. Then you wonder what has happened. then you have to be very careful. But I think the way our organization and most organizations have done this is to clearly state what their values are and walk the talk. It's not sufficient like how Akinola Akinpelu said it, that you should just put it on your website. No, let your employees know who you are, because if you do not define who you are, somebody will define who you are for you, and you don't want that. So it's best as an organization to define who you are. We're a company that thrives on integrity. We're bold, we're customer focused, we're this and we're that. Then clearly state what your position will always be in your business code of conduct, or code of conduct. How do you operate? What will you do if certain things come up? As the leader of the business, you must not just be seen to be saying it, you must be seen to be acting it. If you can walk away from a particular business because of the fact that you can see that it smells of corruption as a CEO of an organization, I see no reason why or how your salesperson will go for such a business. If you can avoid some regulatory pitfall, you are not going to look for ways by which you can parry it or dodge it. You are outrightly saying that the regulator says no, and it is no. As a CEO, I do not see how your employees will gravitate towards it. If you can create awareness and train your employees as to, this is who we are, this is how we're going to react in every situation. If you go by a business, by a government agent or agency, and they say you have to pay, you have to give them something. Oh, yes, you can give them, but ask for a receipt. Clearly state what your company's position to such requests are. Then you will be fine. There are some organizations today, as bad as we think our country is, that nobody will ever make unethical demands of them because they know who they are. So define who you are so that you are not defined by who you are not.
Thank you very much. Define who you are so you are not defined by who you are not. State what your values are, walk the talk, and finally have an elaborate code of conduct. Thank you so much, Ayobami. The next question goes to Bemi, and it's, what lessons can Nigerian companies learn from how organizations in other regions approach ethical leadership? Thank you.
That's an interesting one. Obviously, I haven't worked for Nigerian companies, so I'm not quite sure what practices they are currently doing, but I can speak to my experience outside Nigeria. I think one of the things that we've seen historically is this idea of, ethical leadership, but it's kind of an airy-fairy thing, right? Which no one actually kind of measures it or actually defines what that looks like. You have KPIs for example, sales, you have company goals, but when it comes to ethical leadership, what does that look like? How are you measuring an ethical leader? So one of the things that, we are seeing a move towards now is actually having ethical KPIs, right? So for example, as a leader, whether it's CEO, whether it's the C-suite, whether it's, middle managers, you have performance goals for the year, and you're now embedding, ethics requirements into that, right? In terms of, you need to sell X amount of things, but actually, in achieving that goal, how did you do it? Right? Measuring that, I think, is a key thing that we are seeing a move towards. I think also in terms of rewarding behavior, right? It's not just enough to say, we are incentivizing people to achieve their financial objectives, but are we incentivizing people who do things the right way, right? If someone turns down a bribe and the company loses business, you should still incentivize that stuff, right? I think that's something that we are seeing an increase in. And if you look at, for example, even the DOJ and even the UK SRA, they are all asking companies, to say, okay, if we have an investigation going on, show us your incentives for your leadership, right? Are you incentivizing ethical behavior? And that's another key one I would say. I think also data, right? One thing I don't know if this is done in Nigeria right now, but one of the things that we do as part of a compliance program is that we're looking at our speak up reports. What kind of reports are we getting? What are the issues? What part of the business is it coming from? And how are we able to leverage that to understand where we might have deep cultural issues? And really, leaders taking an active interest in that. You have board members whose entire focus is audit, governance, and ethics, right? So you're showing that leadership prioritizes those behaviors and they're holding their business accountable for that, right? So I don't know if it's done already, but I think definitely if it isn't done, it should be that the CEO and the leadership members and the board are speaking to the compliance staff. Yes, we have code of conduct, but apart from that, what does the program look like in practice? Because that's how you define, the commitment to ethics, them taking an active interest in what's happening day to day. I think lastly is looking at it holistically, right? When you are creating your strategy for the company, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is ethics built into that? Right, as Akinpelu said, and Ayobami to an extent as well. If you are asking people to achieve certain things, are you considering how feasible that is? Because you can say you're ethical leader, but if you're not actually, making it easy for your staff to be ethical, then really, are you ethical leader? Does your actions match what you're saying? So I think those are the things that I would like to see, I think, in Nigeria, if it's not happening already, for companies to be taking it from, a high level, untangible concept and actually making it real, making it impactful, measuring it, tracking it, training on it, asking questions, and taking an active interest in ensuring that the company is operating in accordance with the values and the behaviors that have been stated.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. So ethical KPIs incentivize people who do things the right way. And the big question is ethics embedded in corporate strategy? So it must be from top down. Thank you. Thank you. Very apt. So the next question goes to Ayobami. How would multinational companies handle ethical dilemmas when local business practices conflict with global ethics standards?
Yes, thank you very much, Tommy. I mean, it's quite similar to the last question. I mean, how do you navigate this corruption, regulatory inconsistency, and the political issues that your business may encounter? Number one thing is that state who you are, define you, and let the non-negotiables be placed right on the table when it comes to your organization. This is who we are. We will not do anything beyond this, or we will not get closer to this. The moment you are aligned internally and you're aligned with your third parties as to who you are, then the fourth parties and the whole world will know who you are and what you stand for. And you can't live in a vacuum, right? Then you really need to carry out some form of cultural assessment in the areas where you operate. How is it done where we operate? And what exactly do they really want? What do they really like? What is it that can disrupt our activities in these locations or these places? And again, it is not all the time that you have to confront them or you have to say, oh, this is who I am, and no way or the highway, or highway or no way rather. So you need to strike a balance. So in a situation whereby I've worked for an organization whereby a particular individual within a government agency was adamant about us bribing that particular point in time, because I'll call it a bribe. She was just calling it a gift. But what my organization said is that, look, you are the leader of this organization. It's a government organization. We've looked at it. We realized the fact that you guys need certain things, perhaps computers, infrastructure. We can actually provide computers, and we will tag your name as the person who drove this initiative. You will get the credit for it. Then at that point, everybody's going to be enjoying it, not only you. And it's a 50-50 thing. Then you need to empower your local ethics champions, the people who are really on that field. Let their words be it. I know at every town hall meeting that we have as an organization, whether locally or globally, the business leads are always putting compliance as part of the agenda. Ethics and compliance, it's always number one thing that they speak about. I mean, the leader of the business should not only be about the financial gains. How do we make our money should be very important. I once heard from a former Microsoft compliance said to say that they walked away from a multi-billion-dollar transaction in one of the African countries because some leader of that country was requesting for a bribe, and they said, look, we would not do it, and they walk away. So you must be able to determine when you should be able to walk away, that it's not only about the financial gains for your business. The moment you are able to do that, and again, you should be able to document all ethical dilemmas that you've seen in a particular region. What lessons have you learned from it? And if it comes up again, how should your employees deal with it? So it's about, again, define you so that nobody defines you in a way that you're not. Yeah, make it so clear. It is not always a no-no. You must be able to find a balance at some point. That's why you get to some government formations or agencies that you see that this building was built by this company. And they will put it there, the tag will be high up there. I can tell you a number of police formations that you go to right now. You see that plaque stuck to the entrance to say it was built by this particular bank or by this particular company. You can direct your CSR in such a way that it will be obvious that it was the organization that did it, and it was for the good of all, not for the good of one. So the moment people see you behave like that or you react like that as an organization, then they will know that that is who you are. And the statement of, oh, when you are in Rome, you behave like Romans. A compliance expert or professionals or ethical experts or professionals do not adopt such. When you're in Rome, you don't behave like Roman, you behave like a global citizen, not like Romans. So you don't look at, oh, we are Nigerians, this is how Nigerian is. I saw a comment in the chat box when somebody said law enforcement, what if law enforcement ask you for this? Yes, they will always ask. But the moment they know who you are, they will not deal. Then at that point, you yourself as an organization, you must always be on the right. Are you supposed to file a report on the 31st of every month? It shouldn't go beyond that 31st of every month. And if you know that you have failed to file it, be ready to pay the penalty. Do not request for favors that will make you cut corners. No corner cutting moves should be made by you if you don't want corner cutting requests to be made of you. So you must be upright as an organization yourself so that you can easily navigate all these issues that we see. So you are not, yes, you are in Rome, you will not behave like Romans, but you behave like a global citizen that you are.
Thank you so much. Amazing. State who you are, cultural assessments. You must empower local ethics champions. Ethics and compliance must always be in the agenda. Determine when to walk away. Document your learnings. You should be a global, and you must be a global citizen. Always be in the right and no corner curtains. Thank you so much. That was very, very, very instructive. Akinola, we come over to you. And the question is, if you could leave corporate leaders with one guiding principle for handling ethical dilemmas, what would it be?
Thank you very much. I must first say there is no one statement, no one statement that fits all that answers it. But generally, taking everything into view, especially some of the things I've also had here, I'll say as a leader, as a corporate leader, I think one important thing that you need to do is to build systems. You need to make it systemic. Build systems that will maybe at first compel the organizations to do the right things. You have to build it and nourish it to the point where your organization is always right. It has to trickle down. And when we're talking of system, but also about, the underlying philosophy, your ethical philosophy, Ayobami has mentioned a lot about that, the policies, the processes that ensure that ethics is embedded in what you do. It flows down and it also comes back up. The board is considering how our decisions made. Oh, we are making a lot of money, but how are we making this money? So they are not only applauding you for making money, they are also trying to check how that money is made. We don't want to make this money and then lose it at some other point because of ethical infractions. And why are systems so important is because you may have very good personal values yourself as a leader, but you often find that when you don't have systems in place, it is not sustainable. So you have a good person today at the helm of affairs today, where everything seems okay, and everybody defaults to body language. We are a country where we measure body language a lot. Oh, the body language of our guy is what everybody is following. The next guy may not be good. Even the good guy today may turn bad as a result of pressure, and everything you built starts falling apart. Practical experience also. Why you need to have a system in place, not just relying on good people. I sit on a bit here at the institute, where we have a dispute resolution body, like an industry ombudsman, where we consider a lot of ethical infractions against banks. We receive hundreds of cases every year. And in all the cases, it is very clear. The problem is not that people do not know what is right or what is wrong. It is because different organizations, depending on what organization, it makes it either easy or very quick or rewarding to do the wrong things momentarily. So which is why you have to have a system. Put that system in place. It also has to be transparent because sometimes ethical infractions, ethics dilemmas occur when there are gray areas. So that would be, if there was one thing, if it has only to be one thing, please build systems. Build the systems that ensure that, not only you are doing the right things, but that even as an organization, you understand that, it's not about choosing to be right or wrong, but to also understand, like Ayobami has emphasized, that ethical decision is what eventually drives sustainable profitability. So it's not just that I have to choose what is right or wrong this time, but as an organization, if we want to be profitable sustainably, we have to continuously be ethical. We have to be right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So build systems, and build transparent systems. So that brings us to the end of the first part of this discourse, and I'm sure we've all had a very, very interesting time. We have questions in the chat box. I believe Ayobami has answered the first question. How do you get things done when the security agents refuse to assist except you drop? I don't know if, so Ayobami has partly answered that. I don't know if Akinla wants to add something to that.
Yes, I think I align very much with Ayobami's answer to that question. With security agents, if you know how they can be in Nigeria, they will blackmail you, like every color of mail they can do. And you just have to be firm. Not only as individuals, you have to be firm. You have to, like you said, define yourself. As an organization, you cannot drop. But he has also, something that most organizations do is to say, look, rather than bribe a DP or a commissioner of police, we are willing, as a CSR initiative, to do things that will benefit you, that will probably make your work easier, or that will make life easier for the community rather than, try to buy one person. And that's always a very good outcome. Worst case scenario, if you can't get through with it, if you've done something wrong, face the consequences, or face the fine, or let them drag. Personally, I've been in places where, you get stopped by a police officer and blah, blah, blah. And I say, okay, let's go to the station. And midway, they say, you can go, you are too stubborn. I prefer it that way than to, sometimes you have to define that. And after a while, they get to know you and they leave you alone.
Thank you very much. You need to define who you are.
Okay. Tomi, sorry,
Ayobami.
if I may add to this, and I'm going to give a real life scenario when I was in active law practice. It was a panel beater of mine that called me on a Sunday evening to say that he was harassed by police officers the previous night, and they collected, I think, about 70,000 naira from him that day. And I said, you know what, let's go to that police station. We spoke to the DPO. She was trying to be funny. I said, DPO, I know you have a commissioner of police in this state. I am going to write a petition against you. I brought the station down, knowing my rights, knowing that the person I went to represent did not do anything wrong. And I said, I am going to petition this police station. You will not believe it that the DPO said I should come back the following day for the money. They gathered all the 70,000 naira that was collected, albeit it was in different denominations, different from what the person gave to them initially. But they gave him back his entire 70,000 naira. So stand for what you believe in. And just like Akin said, I have never passed by any checkpoint and they say, give me anything, or happy weekend. Yes, I say happy weekend back to you. So that is the way by which, and it's gotten to the stage where the ones that are at the junction to my house, they know me right now. Oga, and I say, so Oga, then we go. So just stand for who you are, then every other thing will be right for you.
Thank you. Stand for who you are. Thank you so much. Jamie, we have a second question, and that will be directed to you. Can CSR efforts be unethical? For instance, undertaking a project with a government agency your company interfaces with?
I mean, absolutely. That's why when you have companies that have, as Ayobami said, gifts and hospitality thresholds, right? You often have charitable donation or political contribution as part of that. So essentially, I think, yes, CSR is intended to be something that's good for the community. However, if a government entity or political party is asking you to make a donation with the intention of them doing something for you or vice versa, then absolutely it's unethical. It's not about the good of what you're doing, but it's about the intention behind the request. So I think definitely you have to be very mindful of that. And I don't think that it should be a compromise that you should make.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Akin, do you want to add anything to this?
Just to say, there could be gray areas, and if at any point you cannot transparently explain that transaction, the way she has said, you are better off walking away from it. If you can't transparently, explain it, don't do it.
Right. Thank you. If you can't explain it, don't do it, because there are certainly gray areas. So that brings us to the next phase of this discourse. We're going to be considering 2 case study scenarios. And the first case study scenario is the conflict between profit and integrity. So I'll just read this out. A multinational company operating in Nigeria is about to launch a new product that promises high profitability and market dominance. However, during internal reviews, the legal and compliance team discover that one of the product's marketing claims, although not outright false, is potentially misleading and could exploit consumers' lack of technical knowledge. The marketing team argues that the claim is industry standard and that revising it will delay the launch and give competitors an edge. Meanwhile, the head of compliance raises concerns about reputational risk, potential regulatory scrutiny, and ethical implications of going to market with the current messaging. Now, the ethical dilemma. Should the company proceed with the product launch as is to secure a market advantage, or delay the launch to revise its marketing, potentially losing millions in projected revenue and competitive positioning? Maybe the first question comes to you. How should the general counsel or chief compliance officer navigate this tension between business pressure and ethical responsibility?
I think companies typically always see compliance or ethics and compliance as the blocker, the police, not letting us do business. And I think this is where it's very important that you are a business partner. I think if historically you've always been someone who says you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, right? Then the business will kind of might not take you seriously. I think if historically you're someone who has been, has a line, right, which is, look, where we can be flexible, we're flexible. Where we can't, we cannot. And you're very, you stand on, on that kind of path. I think in a situation, it will help you convince the business, right? And the reason I say that is because in this situation now, it's not so much this is illegal. It's more like this is wrong, unethical. So one thing I would do is I would start off by, making it very clear. And I think it's, I think Paluga said this earlier, right? Is, we could make X billion naira now by launching with this, knowing that there's potential, regulatory scrutiny or, consumer, issues later down the line. Or we can think about actually, how do we get this right? It's not about speed, it's about accuracy some of the time. And I would essentially break down the risk for them in a very business-centric way. It's not, I won't just focus on compliance, but let them know that, okay, what are we trying to achieve here? What's the goal? Is it to make an initial win? Or is it that we want to be known, as the company who has this amazing product and we're doing wonderful things and we build reputation and we make money long term, right? Making that very clear to them as to what we are considering playing with in deciding this, I think will go a long way to help the business understand why you're making your suggestions. I think also I would, always, we always talk about storytelling, right? It's important that you use examples, real life examples of when this has happened, right? You've got VW. I think we all know the case, from a few years ago with their emissions charging. They had this idea and they went ahead with the product, knowing it wasn't working. And then they had to, essentially fudge things, which then led to, I think, over $100 billion worth of fines and also payments to consumers. Similarly, the company a few years ago that was, saying that e-cigarettes, e-smoking is safe compared to normal cigarettes, and they were making false claims, exaggerating the benefits of e-cigarettes. And then a few years later, they were fined, I think, about 50 million, because actually it's just as dangerous as smoking real cigarettes. So I think given this, relatable stories to the business, and them see that, people that have done similar things, they pay for it dearly, right? We help them kind of pause and think about, okay, actually, is this the right thing to do? Back to the idea again about, partnering with the business, I think, if they're still intent on going forward, I would then be, okay, let's kind of compromise, right? How can you launch? Maybe you take that statement out, right? Or you revise it and qualify it. I think it's important once again to come with solutions, not just saying, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And I think if that's not working, unless they want to go ahead, this is the bit where having that leadership buy-in comes in, whether with the CEO or the board, you can escalate, right? We always say it's important for ethics to have a seat at the table, because then you can say, look, CEO, board members, this is a big risk that I want to flag to you, that I've told the business what the concerns are. They're not listening to me, so I'm escalating to you. And I think it was Ayoba Ahmed that said it, documenting, your analysis each time to kind of explain why you're suggesting they don't go ahead, and you're backing it up with examples and what the risk is if they proceed. And I think, the last bit as well, as we've said, right, is about being able to help them understand that it's not just about, you know, what we're trying to do, it's about who we want to be known as. Do we want our business to be known as somebody who's, you know, potentially putting, you know, consumers and our customers at risk? And, you know, I think once again, going back to you building that relationship with the business so that when you are coming to them and taking a hard line, they understand it and they listen to you. So that's how I would approach it if I was the GC or the chief compliance officer of the company.
Thank you very much. So be a trusted business partner, be a solution provider, come to the table with documentation. You must also do your risk analysis. And the big question is, the company, what do we want to be known for? Thank you so much. Ayobami, come over to you. What frameworks or tools can help leadership make principled decisions under commercial pressure?
So when you have such commercial pressure like this, the number one thing you need to do, and Bemi has rightfully pointed out this, is do your risk analysis. Risk analysis, risk assessment is always almost important when you find yourself in this. Then another thing is the fact that you may want to check how does this stand with your value system or your the values you have projected as an organization. If you call yourself an organization with integrity, then you need to realign yourself with or reassess the communication you're putting out. This communication, you know it is not outrightly correct, and you say you're a company with integrity. So check, balance it out with your values. What do you stand for? Again, is another system that you want to use now. Your character, your integrity. What are your ethical values? What do you stand for? Then you need to check your duty and principles. You have a duty to communicate truthfully whenever you are communicating, and you have a duty not to mislead consumers, even if the intent is not to deceive outrightly, but you cannot afford to mislead them because of a lot of things that has been highlighted. You have the reputational risk that you're going to be facing as an organization. You have your values and your stakeholders' trust that will be eroded by such. And misleading marketing claim will be another issue, that you do not want your customers to see you as a company that is false. I bet that there is a well-known website where articles or products are being sold right now that we all know. I don't want to mention their names because it's not always what you see is what you get. You want a sofa, then you get they advertise a sofa, you pay for that sofa, and by the time it's delivered to you, you realize that it's just a toy for your kids that you're buying. So is it always? And a lot of us are now always very skeptical about going to that website because you know that I have to be very careful. I mean, when you compare it with his likes, the other websites where things are being marketed and sold, they're all aggregators, but you rather go for the ones that you know that it is what you see is what you get. And so risk assessment is very important. Utmostly important. You have to check your values alongside with what you're communicating, and you need to check your duties that you have in going about navigating this business pressure. It's utmostly important.
Thank you so much. Also, your reputational risk has to be considered, and finally, stakeholder trust will be eroded. Aki, we come to you. What role can corporate culture play in guiding ethical decisions?
Thank you. There's this quotation I came upon, I can't remember. Something like, corporate culture is that invisible hand that guides the decision when no one is watching, really. Corporate culture, been talking about leadership, taking decisions, ethical decisions. I think at the level of culture is that level where it now transcends just the leader. It is now everybody. because in the real sense of the word, as long as you have some quantum of responsibility allocated to you on your desk, even if you are the lowest person in the value chain, you are leading something. And culture is the how. This thing we do in our company or in our organization, this is how we get it done. It is that point where you can now determine whether all those things you have on your website, our values, our core essence, whether they're actually living value, or it is just a part of the wall art or part of the decoration. In this case study, for instance, where marketing is pushing for an ethically questionable claim. Yes, they are saying, no, it's not illegal. This is where culture differentiates. Where you have a culture that prioritizes short-term wins over long-term, trust and sustainability. It may be easy for everyone in the system to rationalize that decision and say, oh, but we are not breaking any law, we can go ahead. But where true ethics is embedded, teams, even before you get to your leader, even before you start having conversations with the GC, like Bemi said, teams themselves would have asked themselves, is this right? We know it's not essentially illegal, but is this even right? Should we even do this? I'd like to share, some practical perspectives, and this is something that I face here on a daily basis. I mentioned the dispute resolution thing we do here. And sometimes just by seeing how different organizations interact with, cases that are brought against them with our system here, you can get a glimpse, if not even a clear picture of the kind of culture that exists in those organizations. So you have Bank A answering, a question of excess charges. And from the get-go, they are also defensive. They are bringing up all sorts of theories, the non-existent one and the creative ones. Just, they don't want to admit the claim. And you have to bring them to independent evaluation. You make a decision. Even when you've made a decision, they are still finding ways to battle it. But we have organizations, on the other hand, immediately you submit the complaints to them. They come back in 2 or 3 weeks and say, oh, we've reviewed this complaint by ourselves. We are wrong. In this country, this Nigeria, we have banks that do that. Not many of them, but so we are wrong. And we are going ahead to credit the customer back with whatever excess charges that we have charged. Confirm that we are in order. And that just tells you culture. Culture really helps. And organizations should prioritize culture, should, encourage compliance and internal audit teams, give them the voice like Bemi has said. And we need to do these ethical risk assessments, like we have also said. And the tone at the top must be very, 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 very sharp, where leadership consistently models ethical factors in their decision making. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Organizations should prioritize culture. We come to the second case study scenario, but because we've almost run out of time, each panelist will have 1 minute to answer the questions. So I'll just be quick with answering and with reading this out. So it's about employee whistleblowing and company loyalty. An employee at a leading tech company discovers that senior management has been engaging in questionable financial practices to meet quarterly performance targets. The practices involve manipulating certain financial data in reports presented to investors. The employee who has worked with the company for over 5 years is torn between their loyalty to the company and their ethical obligation to report the wrongdoing. The employee initially chooses to stay silent, but over time, the stress of knowing about the misconduct grows. They now face a critical decision: report the wrongdoing to regulatory authorities or keep quiet, preserving the company's reputation but compromising their own moral values. Now, the question is, the ethical dilemma is, should the employee blow the whistle and risk the company's financial health, reputation, and the careers of colleagues, or should they stay loyal to the company, potentially allowing unethical practices to continue? I ask, the first question goes to Bemi. What are the ethical responsibilities of employees when they become aware of corporate wrongdoing?
I think it goes without saying that, you know, as I've mentioned before about accountability, right? Everybody at the company needs to be accountable for protecting and the company and doing the right thing, not just compliance. So I think it's important that staff know that, you know, when they speak up, they're protecting the business, protecting the stakeholders, protecting their colleagues, you know, protecting the wider community. And you know, I think it's very important to know that if we don't say anything, then we are complicit, right? There's a saying that I sticks in my mind is what you permit, you promote, what you allow, you encourage, right? So by not saying anything, you're part of the problem. You know, and I think it's about also how you communicate that with them, right? You have the policy that says, you know, speak up, report concerns, but then when they report concerns, what are you doing about it? If I know that I report and you won't do anything, I'm not going to report, right? So companies need to be very intentional about communicating confidentially, of course, the outcome of reports, giving metrics to the staff so they're visible to see, okay, we listen. When you speak up, we take action and we fix things. Because the ultimate goal of speaking up is to fix things before it becomes even bigger and, you know, becomes front page news.
Thank you so much. Ayobami, how should leadership handle whistleblowing within the company? And let me also ask a follow-up question. What structures should be in place to encourage reporting without fear of retaliation?
Okay. Whistleblowing is a tested feedback mechanism that allows an organization to detect any wrongdoing before it becomes so terrible or bad. Now, there are legal obligations for organizations globally. Now, I'm speaking about global organizations now, to take whistleblowing very importantly. And this has given rise to a lot of new laws and regulations, and a lot of companies have been penalized for not taking whistleblowing very important. So it must be handled with care. Whistleblowers must be well protected. The anonymity of whistleblowers, even though not guaranteed, but the protection should be guaranteed. And it should be a platform that everybody can get into. Whistleblowing platforms can be several, I mean, it can be implemented in several ways. It does not have to be a system. When I say system, technology alone. It can be a situation whereby even the line reports can be walked to directly for people to speak, for people to speak to them about concerns or any issues. So it's a platform that must be taken care of properly. It must be guarded jealously, and it must be well protected. Now, how do you encourage whistleblowers to come forward? Number one is that you must ensure that you have a workable whistleblowing policy and a non-retaliation policy. I tell anybody who cares to listen, any organization who has decided to have this policy in place has actually given a full guarantee to the whistleblower of outright full protection. It's like an organization putting its hands in an handcuff to say, look, I've cuffed myself. I am vulnerable towards you. I tell people when I'm creating awareness about whistleblower platform that I personally, I will be glad to blow the whistle or for an international organization, and I am not protected because I'll become a billionaire through that means. Because that's the easiest for a company to lose money, especially if you're an international organization. There are laws, global laws, that actually makes it mandatory for whistleblowers to be protected. So to encourage whistleblowers, one, let the policies be there, whistleblowing policy and non-retaliation policy. Let the whistleblowers see that you have actually taken action on whatever they've whistleblown on. It is utmostly important for them to see that you've taken action, and you must take that action within a very short period of time. So you do not have 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, or forever to take action. They must see that you've taken action, and they must see that you actually appreciate whatever they've done. Now, organizations are taking it a notch higher by actually compensating whistleblowers. So you see that certain fractions of whatever we've recovered or whatever that you've protected us from that we're giving back to the whistleblower. We see that some organizations are already doing that. So I hope I've been able to answer the question with those.
Excellent. Yes, you have. Yes, you have. So I can come to you. What role does corporate governance play in preventing these ethical dilemmas, and how can companies ensure that ethical concerns are addressed early?
Thank you very much. In view of time, the second part of that question, how can companies ensure? I think Ayobami has spoken to it. I adopt everything he has said about policies and structures, whistleblowing, and that would work. So I'll just briefly, just say, what role does corporate governance play? Corporate governance is the framework for accountability in most companies. It's how institutions organizations design their systems to, check power, to ensure there's transparency. And also it can determine how ethical concerns are heard and addressed. So, for whistleblowing, you realize that governance principles that would encourage whistleblowing would include having clear ethical reporting structures, like you mentioned, protected whistleblowing platforms, board level business risk and compliance committees, and even in Nigeria today, if you look at the Code of Corporate Governance, LCCG, the sectoral guidelines, CBN guidelines, they emphasize whistleblower protection, and some sectoral guidelines have even, strengthen this requirement, moving it just beyond recommendations or, suggestions. It's not a requirement that you must have whistleblower protection. They also emphasize, audit and compliance, independence, and all of these things, they strengthen how, people in organizations feel confident to come forward with blowing whistles or reporting, ethical concerns anonymously, especially when there is a fear of backlash if they come out openly. So, adhering to the codes, adhering to these principles, and even going beyond that to have higher standards of voluntary compliance can really help. If the governance structure, tone at the top, the board, put in place such structures, it will really help to ensure that ethical concerns are not just heard, they are discovered early and they are quickly addressed. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Last question. In cases of whistleblowing, how can the company protect the whistleblower? And I think that's very important, while ensuring that any resulting investigations are fair and unbiased. Bemi, this is for you.
I mean, I think, Ayobami has pretty much answered this. Obviously, you've got the, confidential reports in line. You keep it, and when you're investigating, need to know basis, right? Don't just go around telling everybody, but figure out who needs to be involved and keep it to them. When you store documentation, make sure it's, got passwords on it, encryption, things like that. Safeguards, right? If an employee, as part of the investigation, find out, do they have fears about retaliation? Do they have fears that they can't continue working in the current position? If so, figure out how you, for example, transfer them, put them on, leave, paid leave, while they, it's all sorted out. So make them feel supported throughout the entire process. I think also there's two-pronged approach. What we do is you have the main investigation, and then at the end you have what we call anti-retaliation check-ins. So regular check-ins with the employee to make sure that they haven't been retaliated against, they've not had any negative consequences from making a report. And then also transparency. I think we've said it before. Complete the investigation in a timely manner. Communicate in terms of your findings, the actions you've taken, the lessons learned, the RCA, all of that. I think that all helps to make staff, both the current whistleblower and other future ones, know that this company takes this seriously, they will act, and that will then make them feel even more confident in coming forward in future.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. And we have one question here, but I think from everything everyone has said, I think that really answers the question. So I will not go into this question. So it's been a very interesting discourse and quite enjoyable. I want to say thank you. Sadly, as with all good things, we have come to the end of the question segment. But before we go, may I call on Mrs. Mercy Edukupo Amina to give us the vote of thanks as we round up the program. She is the director. She's a director with Kaizen Academy Limited. Over to you, madam.
Okay, thank you so much. Tommy, it's just been amazing listening to you moderate this session. And I don't probably have the words to kind of articulate how much impact this session has had, and it has been. I probably don't know what my expectations were, but I should have known better, because when you have people like Temi and Lillian and Ayo managing things, you just know you are going to just have a very excellent outing. So Tommy, thank you so much for being a very gracious, wonderful, and articulate anchor and moderator for this session. On behalf of Kaizen, on behalf of the board, on behalf of the management team, we are extremely grateful. In addition to that, this session could not have been a success without Ayobami Adisa, without Gbemi Yusuf and Akinpelu Akinola. Just listening to you, I could actually listen to you all day long, because when you do have the experts in the room, it just hits all the right talking points. It hits all the right knowledge points. Everything comes together and you just feel like, yes, they get it. And because they get it, you are more fulfilled. And that's really what this session has been. Overcoming ethical dilemmas. I think that for anyone that made that time to be with us today, you did not go wrong. Your 1.5 hour thereabout that you spent has been extremely invaluable. And we hold all that to our esteemed panelists. So thank you so much once again, Ayobami. Thank you so much, Gbemi. Thank you so much, Akinola. We are absolutely indebted to you at Kaizen. And we do hope that the next time we call on you, that you would be disposed to help us. It's been a potpourri of learnings. I've just been like a sponge, taking everything that you have said, talking about cultural assessment, going the highway or no way, just trying to find the middle ground, talking about what are the thresholds when it comes to gifts, other innovative way in which you could actually impact your community without actually doing anything unethical. And just the learning about anchoring your decisions on your core values. I think that was just mind-blowing. But this is really what we need to hear as we work within the governance space, as we work within the compliance space, and as we advise our clients when it comes to governance, regulatory compliance, and all the like. This is what we need to hear. So we'll keep putting more of such conversations out there, and we hope that you would honor us for many times as we call on you. Thank you so much once again. This would not have been possible at all, once again, without Temi Adedoja, the head of our management team. She's in charge of training, as well as the team that she has with her, Lillian and others. We are extremely grateful. Temi, we appreciate you. We thank you for all the good work. Please, we keep expecting much more. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And on behalf of Kaizen, we say to everyone that has been with us for this 1.5 hour plus, that if you did indeed like everything you heard, if you found the session resourceful, if you found it absolutely enthralling and knowledgeable, and you want to know more, Kaizen is available for you to reach out to us. All we are all about is governance. Everything we do is about governance, corporate governance, board evaluation, regulatory compliance, risk management. We help you with your code of conduct formulations. We help you with your framework and your policies formulation, all within corporate governance services. So please do reach out to us. Until we come your way next time again, please follow us on our socials. We are on LinkedIn. We are on all the social media platforms that you can find. So follow us for your regular updates. Follow us for your regular governance and compliance tidbits. And also do reach out to us if you want further education. We have trainings. We can organize in-house training for you. We can organize events around your governance. We can help your team. For all the things we've heard today, we can help your team to bring them all together in a very cohesive manner, such that your organization and what you do for your organization is a lot more easier and is a lot more enriched. So till next time again, on behalf of everyone at Kaizen, the board, the management, and every other person that are our partners, we say thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ma.